25B, 29, 29B, take 5.
Yes.
Okay, 29B5 was affirmed. Mechabe Esanet, I want to go back to that Mishnah. So he says, someone who extinguishes a flame, and he extinguishes the flame, said he's afraid of the Gentiles, let's say, like we said about the Persians, they had a certain day of the year that it was their holiday, and you could not have any lights shining anywhere but in their house of idol worship. And if they would catch a person having lights on in their house, they would maybe their life would be endangered. Then you took out the fire. You're allowed to take out the fire for that purpose. It's the question of saving a life. And there's no violation of Shabbat. So therefore, Hamachabe Esanem, they should determine nothing. Or may list them, or let's say there is robbers in town, or you close the light, you extinguish the light because you didn't want the robbers to notice you, because if the robbers notice you, it would be dangerous. So that's also not a case of not a violation of Shabbat, even though extinguishing a fire is one of the 39 malachot. But here, good morning, Asaf. Good to have you back. We're just reviewing a little bit the Mishnah that we started yesterday. The Mishnah first lists 3 cases that there's no violation of Shabbat because they were done out of protection of life. There was a danger of life, and he extinguishes the fire as a result of to prevent the danger of life. Therefore, there's not a violation, and there's no need to bring any sin offering for an unintentional violation of Shabbat. Also, we said a person has certain sickness, and if there's lights on, that could really very harm him, and it's dangerous for his health. So then all of those cases, or the hecholas, we have maybe 4 cases. 4 cases in the Mishnah. Nochrim, listim, ruachot, nechol, shisha. Or something. There was a sick person that was sleeping, and if he would wake up, he was very, very extremely sick, and he needs to get some sleep, or else his body he's in very dangerous state, let's say. And then you took out the fire. You're allowed to take out the fire for his safety, for his he should get well. He shouldn't die as a result of his sickness. And so we say, let's say he needs to sleep. He's very weak, and if he falls asleep, he will be able to get his strength back. So in all those cases, he's patur. Says he's exempt. But the Gemara, they're going to say it's not just he's exempt. He's not that he. Generally, the rule is patur means exempt, but you did something wrong, but you don't have to bring a korban. There's a rabbinic violation, no biblical violation. But here there's not even a rabbinic violation because it was protection of life, saving of life. So patur is exempt. However, kichos alaneh, if someone takes out a fire, not because he's extinguishing, not because he needs, he's creating something, he's doing some sort of something special, he's creating something as a result of his extinguishing a fire. Let's say, for instance, if you have if you have a wick and you need a wick to burn properly. So if the wick was lit and you want to extinguish it for the purpose of that it should light properly the next time, or you extinguish a fire in order that it should make a coal that they'll turn into a coal. So you're doing something creative. You need the extinguishing to create something for you. The extinguishing is doing something. It's making the thing a charcoal. It's making the wick much better. When you're extinguishing for some ulterior purpose, not because you're interested, you need the extinguishing. You're just extinguishing the fire because there's something else going on. You want to save, you're afraid the lamp is going to break, therefore you're extinguishing the fire. You're afraid that you want to save on the fuel, so you're extinguishing the fire. But it's not that you inherently need the extinguishing. The extinguishing itself is doing something for you. It's creating something for you. So That is going to be a discussion here in the Mishnah. Would that type of act of extinguishing from for that type of purpose, would that also be in violation of the Shabbat? So that's the question of it. So if someone has mercy, he's extinguishing because he has mercy on the lamp. He doesn't want the lamp to, let's say it's an earthenware lamp, and the heat, we said yesterday, could break the lamp, right? Right? We said that. So therefore he's extinguishing for that purpose, not because he needs the fire extinguished for that it's going to extinguishing the fire is going to create something for him, or because he has mercy on the oil, or because he has mercy on the wick, he wants to save the wick. He's not interested, he doesn't need the extinguishing for itself. The extinguishing, the act of extinguishing is not creating anything, so chayav. He is chayav, he is obligated. So this opinion says that's enough to be obligated in violation of Shabbat. Rabbi Yossi poter b'kula, Shimon poter b'kula, Rabbi Yossi poter b'kula. Rabbi Yossi exempts in all these cases because he holds that's not enough of an act to be in violation of Shabbat. You have to be able to, your action has to be creating something, producing something, being a productive act of design. However, but there's one, so therefore, because if you're extinguishing the fire, not because you need the extinguishing to do something, if the extinguishing is creating something for you. Like when you plow, the plowing creates we needed the plowing to make the ground ready to plant. You needed when you make a fire, you need to make a fire in order for it to you need something to burn. But here you're just extinguishing, and this is one of the malachot, one of the acts of forbidden acts on Shabbat, but it's not. Yossi says, and it's Reb Shimon's opinion, it's not. It's what I think Reb Shimon also. It's not an act that is considered sufficient to be obligating you on Shabbat, chutz min haptila, except the situation when you had a wick and you needed to extinguish the wick to make it be able to burn better the next time, then that extinguishing is actually a creative act. It's you needed that extinguishing. It's doing something for you. Meshu also pecham, because you're making the wick into something that's able to be used easily, and therefore it has a constructive purpose. So now there's different ways to explain. If you look in the art scroll, they have a nice note. If you turn to page 30A1, 30A1, note 1, right? You see in paragraph number 1, it says that the general principle of Shabbat, that labor, meaning a malacha, must serve a constructive purpose. Meaning, if you do an act and it's destructive, there's no violation of Shabbat on a Torah level if you do an act that's destructive. Meaning, even though knocking down a building on Shabbat is one of the 30. So there's one of the 30 malachas is boneh, is building, and one of the malachot is also soter, is knocking down a building. But that is only now knocking down a building seems like a destructive act. But the obligation, the violation of Shabbat for knocking down a building is only when you knock down a building with the intention of rebuilding. And you're knocking down for a purpose, because you can't rebuild unless you knock down. Similarly, if there's a malacha on Shabbat called writing, you're not allowed to write on Shabbat. You're also not allowed to erase on Shabbat. Another malacha is erasing. But the malacha, the act of erasing on Shabbat is only in violation if you erase with the intention of writing. You needed the erasing, so the erasing is a constructive act. When we get by whiteout and we erase something with the whiteout, the erasing is a constructive act, but that whiteout is going to give us the ability to go ahead and write on that spot. So, if you just erase something, someone wrote some good notes and you just erased it, just to erase, that's destruction. That's a destructive act. And that would not be in violation of the Torah violation. There's, of course, many of these cases, there can be a rabbinic violation if you just to destroy for the purpose of destroying. So back in note 1 over there on 38.1, the general principle of Shabbat is that labor, which is a malacha, that means one of the acts of labor that would create a violation of Shabbat, must serve a constructive purpose to qualify as malacha. There is a dispute, however, when the Torah says a person is in violation for doing this act, how is it? What acts are included in that? So according to Rabbi Yehuda has a much broader understanding of the prohibition, and he says that a labor done for any purpose, any constructive purpose, is considered a malacha. Means if therefore you extinguish a fire because there was someone sick, not someone sick, sorry, you extinguish fire because you wanted to save on the oil. That's that's not destructive, that's constructive. You want to save on the oil. And you extinguish the fire. So that's enough to be in violation according to him. Even though you don't need it's the malacha that's called malacha, she'ein tzricha legufa, you don't need the extinguishing. Meaning you would have been happy if it would have burned forever and not if somehow it would burn forever and no fuel be consumed, you'd be happy. You would not have taken out the fire if it could last forever. If it's done for any other reason, so now, however, Rabbi Shimon holds a labor is considered. Morning, doctor.
Morning.
The doctor is in his full gear.
Sorry, I'm late.
We believe better late than never. That's our motto.
Perfect.
Morning.
Morning.
We are on 29b5 in the Mishnah.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back to 29b5. But you just came in at a very important argument in the Mishnah.
Okay.
In Shabbat, we know there are 39 malachot, 39 categories of things that are defined as labor, as work.
Right.
And if someone does any of those things, makes a fire, writes on Shabbat, plows on Shabbat, these are all different types of categories of violation. But then there's a question, if I do this act, a person goes ahead and he, let's say, extinguishes a fire. Right. One of the melachot of Shabbat is now extinguish a fire. At what point doesn't mean any time I extinguish a fire, I am violation of Shabbat. If it's now also we have a rule that in order to violate Shabbat, it has to be done for a constructive purpose.
Right.
If you do some act of Shabbat to destroy for point of destruction, that's not a meaning. If you would go in and burn, Simon's here. Look who's here. We just said better late than never, Simon. Brachim habayim from your travels. Okay. Simon, you can sit on that bench if you want, whatever you want. Yes. If a guy goes ahead and he makes a fire he wants to burn something up. He wants to burn someone has a notebook and he wants to burn the other guy's notebook. That would not be a constructive act. That would be a fire, not for a constructive act, and would not be a Torah violation, right? Mm-hmm. He used the fire to destroy. A fire could be used to burn, to give light, to give heat. That would be a constructive purpose of fire. You could do the same act of making a fire, but sometimes it will be a Torah violation, so they won't be a Torah violation. Because one was a destructive act, one was a constructive act. So it has to be for a constructive thing. But once it's for a constructive thing, now we get into how far do we go on how and the type of constructive thing it has to be. Meaning to say, the Gemara gives this case. So I'm going to read to you a little note. Is that in the Mishkan, all the malachos, if you go to 30A1, we'll skip to 30A1 and note number 1. If you look at paragraph 3, back to 30A1, determining, you have it, Dr. Lauza? Yeah, 30A1, no, right over here, 30A1, 30A1, note 1.
Oh, sorry. Yes, got it.
So if you go to paragraph 3, in determining the defined purpose of various malachot, Reb Shimon goes to the linkage of the laws of Shabbat, the construction of the Mishkan, because that's right. The laws of Shabbat are connected to the building of the Mishkan. The Torah says you can't build the Mishkan on Shabbat, and the things that were considered work in the Mishkan, acts of labor in the Mishkan, are considered works for us. But now the question: how far now? Now, according to Rashi, the salient point is that the Mishkan, all malachot were done to achieve an inherently higher order of design. They were not performed merely as a response to some sort of external difficulties, right? There was weaving, there was writing on the boards to know which boards matched when you put together the 48 boards. Thus, the malachot prohibited on the Sabbath must also perform to achieve a higher order of design. A labor that's only done as a reaction to something else, and some sort of external condition, either to prevent or rectify, is not inherently creative one, and one is therefore not liable for it. Rabbi Shimon holds, for instance, that's the example of our, now going back to our Mishnah 29b. If you took out, we say one of the malachot na Shabbat is taking out a fire, because let's say they wanted to make charcoal in the Mishkan to be able to have things, the mizbeach, the altar, the things to burn. They had wood, and they put offerings, and there were things that are burnt on the mizbeach. But if you extinguish a fire to make a charcoal, to make a coal, so that's a very creative act, right? But you made the coal. Look who's here, Mark. It's a great day. Mark Asby's back. Simon's back. Dr. Lala's here. Adam's here. I mean, I think Mashiach's coming. Rabotai, Mashiach is coming. This is a great sign. Holy people, he has smiles on the face. I love to see smiles. Mark is smiling away. The Holy Torah, we're getting closer to Rosh Hashanah. Everyone feels the holiness. They're coming, they're coming, they're coming. Okay, the Yanks are coming, right?
Yes.
So with Mark, just to bring you up to date, you're coming into a very fundamental, one of the famous disagreements in Masechta Shabbat, on the top 10, top 10 on the board is a malacha, an act, a work, a constructive act, and not a destructive, she'ena sricha legufo, but you don't really need it. It's not that you need that act, but you're just doing it because of some other reason. And we're giving the example. We're giving the example of taking out a fire because you want to save on the oil. You want to save on the electric bill, right? You want to have oil left, and it's Friday night. You're going to sleep, and you're not allowed to take out the fire, of course. But what about if a guy went ahead and he took out the fire because he wanted to save on the oil? Did he violate the Torah? Is that a Torah violation or a rabbinic violation? Now the question is, what do you mean? One of the 39 malachot on Shabbat is extinguishing. So of course he violated that violation, and he extinguished for a purpose. It wasn't destructive. He did it for a purpose of we didn't want to have the oil burning up. He wanted to save oil, but he didn't need. But the act of extinguishing wasn't. If somehow that oil would have, I gave an example. If that oil would be oil that could remain burning and nothing gets consumed, he would not have extinguished that fire. Let's say you would have that magic oil that just burns and nothing gets. You don't need the extinguishing. It's not that you needed the extinguishing for itself, like to make a coal, right? You extinguish the fire, you lit the wood, you blew it out. Now you have something burned. Now you have a coal burning. So when you do this act, you did an act, but you didn't need it for itself. So now that's the question, whether he would be in violation of Shabbat. Would that be a Torah violation or not? So that is the argument here in the Mishnah. We have the Rabbi Yehuda holds, even if you don't need it for itself, you did it for some other purpose. You don't need it because I need this act to be done. I don't need the extinguishing for itself. for the extinguishing to do something for me. Like we spoke about in the Mishkan, they did an act of work for a higher design, for some sort of purpose that I needed that design. I needed it. That act served something special. This act, I wove something, I wrote something. Here, I'm extinguishing. What do I need? I don't need the extinguishing for anything here. I don't need extinguishing to make the coal. I need the extinguishing just to get rid of I just don't want the fire to burn. So, but I did the act of extinguishing. So that is an example of a malacha, an act of work that was done with not for the purpose of that was I needed it for itself. And that's the argument in the Mishnah, whether you're in violation of Shabbat on a Torah level or in violation of Shabbat on a rabbinic level. So with that being said, we go now to the Mishnah, the Gemara on Lamed Amud Aleph, 30. Good morning. 30a1. Now, the Gemara says, Midiktani Seifa. The Seifa says in the Mishnah, Chayav. The Seifa says in the Mishnah that if he went ahead and he took out the oil, this is because he wanted to save the oil, or he wanted to save the wick, and he took out the wick, he blew it out because he didn't want the wick to burn. So we had Rabbi Yehuda says, Yechayav. Yechayav, your violation of Shabbat. So Shemar says, Shmamina, Rabbi Yehudahi. So we see that the author of the Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, because he's the one on record that says that when you do a labor, a malacha, not for its purpose, not because you needed its design. Am I clear, Doctor? Mm-hmm. You just did it for some ulterior motive. He says you're in violation of the Shabbat. Shema mina Rabbi Yehuda. So we see that's Rabbi Yehuda. So now the Gemara says, good morning, Sam. Good morning, Sammy. So the Gemara says, Reisha b'maya sikna. What is the case of the Reisha? Reisha means like Rosh, the head, the beginning. The beginning of the Mishnah. The beginning of the Mishnah said that if a person took out a fire because it was someone who was sick and he took out the fire because the fire was preventing the sick person from sleeping, or you took out a fire because you were afraid of the robbers. You don't want the robbers to notice there was someone here in this house because they might jump the person, they might attack. So in the Reisha b'maya sikna, what is the case of the Reisha? And the Reisha says, if you take out the fire because someone was sick, the Reisha says you are patur, you are exempt if you take out the fire for that reason. So the Gemara wants to know what's the case talking about, because the Gemara wants to say if the guy was in danger of his life, so it's not that you're just exempt, you're allowed to do it. Exempt means you didn't do a violation of the Torah, but you did a rabbinic violation. If the guy is in danger of his life and death and he needs to sleep or else he's going to die because he's so weak, so then it's not just you're exempt, you're allowed to do it. Not just after the fact, you're not a violation. You even before the fact, you're supposed to take out that fire if his life is in danger. And if his life is not in danger, then you're in violation. Then you're in violation of Shabbat. If the guy is sick and his life is not in danger, it's more comfortable getting the light out. But he doesn't need it for his. It's not a life and death situation. So then it should be a violation of Shabbat. Just like Yom Kippur is coming up. Someone is sick. Everyone should be well. If someone is sick on Yom Kippur, but if their life is not in danger, so if a person eats, then they're in violation of Yom Kippur because there's no allowance to eat on Yom Kippur, drink on Yom Kippur if it's not a life and death situation. Life and death, then he could do it. Okay, I want to wish everyone a beautiful day. Great to have everybody. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you so much. You see, Doctor goes 1, 2, 3, right? We did. You came on a very interesting Gemara, right?
Right.
Something.